Underdog market movers for 3/13/2026 on Drafting Out Loud. Still exciting times and some crazy things going on with the movement. Let's jump into it. First, we're going to look at the platform values on Underdog relative to DraftKings. A lot of these players are still on the list from before. There are some new additions at the bottom of the list also. So at the top of the list, we have David Montgomery, DJ Moore, who've been there for a while. They moved up a ton, and they're still moving up on DraftKings, now into the 50s for both of them. And DJ Moore is about to get into the 40s, which is rather, crazy, I think, a little bit. 65, I thought, was starting to get a little high for DJ Moore, but I could be convinced that he should go in the 50s. But into the 40s is rather intense. I think this is a great time to take advantage of some value here on some of these players, as they might be more. I think they're more valuable on Underdog than DraftKings. And you've heard me say this probably the last time as well, but I'm going to add to it a little bit. So David Montgomery, I think it's the same thing. He's mainly going to get touchdowns, not the biggest pass catcher, so he's probably a bigger value on Underdog. DJ Moore, he's not someone that's getting 10 targets a game oftentimes. He has, but he's not doing it every game. He's, maybe getting some screens, he's maybe getting some deep passes, but he's in one of the better offenses in the NFL. So again, he might be a touchdown type player potentially. And so he is a little bit more value on Underdog if he's not getting you 10 catches, but instead getting you 10 touchdowns. Parker Washington's been on this list forever, still number 3 on the list. The gap's closing a little bit between the two, mainly because he is starting to fall down the draft boards on DK just a tad. But he's still one of the highest values. Some people really like him even in the 50s. Obviously, that's why he's there. And some high profile people think so as well. So I think he's another player that you want to try to take on Underdog. He falls into the 80s sometimes on Underdog. So you can get him later too if you see someone else you like more. Zach Charbonnet, makes sense that he's on here just because I think Underdog is a little bit either they're. Well, you know what? I'm going to take that back a little bit. The risk profiles on Underdog versus on DraftKings seem to be different. The risk profile on Underdog is if you're injured, we're not going to draft you. Or if you're in the news for something, we're not going to draft you. On DraftKings, it's more like you're a rookie, so there's the risk there. So we're going to push you down the board. So on Underdog, you can see we have Zach Charbonnet, we have Rashee Rice, we have Tyreek Hill. All 3 players have something going on from an injury or, court legal thing that is pushing them down the board on Underdog. At some point in time, they become a value. If you can get Rashee Rice falling past 34 into like the 4th round, at some point in time, I think you need to draft him a little bit, at least sprinkle him in. Even at 34, if he plays, he's probably outperforming all the rest of the players at that spot for the most part, or he could at least. So I think he's, he starts to become an interesting pick if he continues to, especially if he continues to fall down the board. Just keep that in mind. We also have on this list Wan'Dale Robinson. This one actually makes sense because he is more of a PPR scam. He's actually rising on DK. He was in the 90s. Now he's in the 80s. On Underdog, I think he was at like 110. Now he's at 102. So he's rising as well. Josh Allen has been a value on Underdog for the longest time. In fact, Matthew Stafford used to be on this list, but along with Joe Burrow. Now we got Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, and then Shitter Sanders at the bottom of the list. Matthew Stafford has fallen off the list as one of the better values on the site. And this is an interesting thing that's going on here. One of the things that I'm playing around with, and I might do another video here, I'm almost guaranteed to, is how to take advantage of what's going on with these ADPs. There's a couple things that I did wrong on some drafts. and then I try to correct them. I don't think it went as perfect as I wanted to, but I think there's something that you can do here with these either high value quarterbacks or these super low value quarterbacks combined with some of these other values on underdog too. Even someone like a Colson Loveland, who is becoming more of a value on underdog, now at pick 44, and he actually falls into the fifth round every once in a while on underdog. Kenneth Walker, value on underdog also. Surprised these ADPs haven't gotten closer to like the 12, 13, 14. So there's probably still movement there in that one. I'd be drafting him on either platform right now. But if you want to target him, maybe underdog's the place to target him, assuming he's sometimes going at like that 19 and end of the first round. I'm not saying that he's a good pick there. I mean, think about what KC's done in the past with their running backs. Um, and I think there's more risk there than some people believe. But if you want to play the ADP game, I think there's still time to play that ADP game. Colby Parkinson is a better value on underdog, and you can get him pretty late, like it's showing there at pick 218. Also pretty late is Ferguson. And so one thing you could maybe do is get two LA Ram tight ends and double them up if you have an ugly tight end room, or if everything else is kind of built out and you don't really need anything else and you feel like getting the top two pass catching tight ends on the Rams will help your team. I did do that once. That's why it comes to mind. Okay, here's our underdog ADP risers. And a lot of this is based on the free agency news. In fact, every single one of these players but one is due to free agency news. Chris Rodriguez signed with, and you can see some of these teams are a little off, so I maybe have to correct that, but a lot of them are off actually. Chris Rodriguez signed with the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's now going at 206. I'd be drafting him there, but I see him going much earlier than that in drafts. So you don't want to get too out of control, but I think there's probably value there. But who knows what's going to happen? Things could change a lot in Jacksonville in that they could sign another running back or draft a running back. So you never know how this will work out in the end. But I think it's someone you probably want to target right now while his ADP is still relatively high as they adjust. Chig is another player that just signed. He signed with the Commanders. I think he's an interesting play if you can get him, especially like if you can get Jaden Daniels or someone else from that same division conference. Isaiah Pacheco signed with Detroit, and he is now at 200 ADP. I don't know how I feel about that one. He didn't do much in KC, but he is now another year removed from the injury, so maybe there's something there. Sprinkle him in builds that make sense. I did take him one time when he was falling. If he starts rising too much, I think obviously he gets less and less excited as he rises. Romeo Doubs is rising as he's now the number one on the Patriots. Who knows what they do from here? They could still trade for another wide receiver or draft a wide receiver or even sign another wide receiver. There's a couple out there still. But right now he's at 115. I think some people predict that he's going to get into the 100s, 100 to 110. So there might be a little bit of meat still on that bone. I think the Aaron Rodgers one is a little under the radar, though you can see he has gone up 4%, 4.5% for the week. So maybe, a little under the radar, or maybe he was falling before. Now he's finally coming back up. Back with Minnesota, he was kind of going at the same place as their other running back, and now he's tons of picks later. I think that they probably got to get closer together again. So now's the time probably to draft Aaron Jones if you can. Geno Smith here, almost cracking the top 200. There's people that aren't excited about him, but I think he makes sense on the right team. If you can kind of stack him, or if he just falls. But in fact, I don't see him fall that often. If anything, I see him go well above this 200. So don't rely on him too much. Keaton Mitchell, I see him now going much earlier too, even than this 180, like in the 160s or 150s, maybe even. So he's on the Chargers now. I don't know what to think of this one. I think some people obviously are really excited for it. Vidal did really well last year. Why is Mitchell the two? Mitchell's going to a head coach he's familiar with, so maybe that's why, or not even the head coach he's familiar with. He's going with the brother of a head coach he's familiar with, I think is what it is. Um, maybe that's why. But I would love to see, like, I'm almost thinking like either you take Mitchell or Vidal, whichever one drops further, because you don't know who's going to be the number two there. And you almost think that all three of them might get some run. I don't know. I could be wrong there, though. He is rising, though, so if you like him, try to get him now before he rises anymore. Justin Jefferson, because they signed Kyler Murray, is starting to rise. I keep on trying to get Justin Jefferson at the end of the first, beginning of the second. Haven't been able to do it one time, so that's unfortunate. Puka's rising, not sure why, but he is. That's the only one that you don't know what's going on. Emmanuel Wilson, I think, is a good one. He just signed with Seattle, and in fact, on some of the news sources, you couldn't even find it on there. So he is now with Seattle. He's almost kind of their number one right now. He did great things in Green Bay when he had the starting role for a couple of games when Josh Jacobs was hurt. And even when Josh Jacobs was playing, Emmanuel Wilson would come in and play some meaningful snaps and do something with those snaps, not snaps, with those snaps. Um, a lot of things could change. Seattle could sign another running back. They could draft another running back. But if you can get Emmanuel Wilson towards the very end of the draft, I think that's a great pickup, if you ask me. Seattle could also stop with just Emmanuel Wilson, knowing that, or hoping that Zach Charbonnet comes back later on. And Emmanuel Wilson has proven that he can play as part of a two running back tandem and still produce some results. And Seattle's probably one of those teams where he could thrive in something like that if that did happen. So I like him here. I'd be taking him even a little earlier than this. Um, if definitely if you need a running back. Jalen Naylor's now cracking the top 200. I think he's interesting as like a last pick, second to last pick, second to last round. Maybe right now because there's 20 rounds, you could say 18th round or something like that. I don't know if you want to go much later than that because you don't know what's going to happen with that. But he did get a decent amount of money. Tootin rising up the boards. And Chris Rodriguez, his running mate, also rising up the boards. Some people are a little shy with Tootin because they signed Rodriguez, but 58 is rather aggressive now on Tootin, and he's still kind of going up. As you can see, 20% for the week, 2.6% for the day. J.K. Dobbins going up. Some people think that he should be in the 100s also, so there might be some meat on the bone there. And Rachaad White just signed with the Commanders, and I like that pick there. I think the Commanders are a great team for him. Ideally, he takes that passing down role. Like Eckler had that role before he got hurt, and people were kind of excited about him. And he was doing some things with it. And Rachaad White could as well with that passing role. They definitely found places to get Eckler the ball, and could they do the same thing with White? Also, depending what they do with the draft, maybe White even has more of a role than just that. He didn't run great, but I think he ran better than expected in Tampa Bay. We got our fallers, and there's a lot of players on the list I think you just want to avoid right now. Trey Benson, I think, is an avoid until he gets to the very end of the draft or there's new news. Bucky Irving is still falling. Expect him to maybe fall into the fourth round. And actually, I've seen him fall into the fourth round. So I think right now you're passing on him even at a little bit of a value and waiting for him to come back around in the fourth round is when you want to consider him. Theo Johnson falling because they signed Isaiah Likely. You can get Theo in the last round now, so if you want him and it makes sense for your team. And I think there's still, I think it makes sense to 20th round. You can do worse than Theo Johnson, especially if you need a tight end. Devon Achan, he's falling. I'm surprised about this one. I haven't drafted. I don't think I've drafted him once. I could be wrong on that, but I don't think I've drafted him once. I think his role's probably going to change a ton in Miami, and I don't know if he has the same upside. People keep on talking about the fit as far as will he catch as many passes because they don't have Tua there who's checking it down constantly. And the plays that Mike McDaniel was calling for those checkdowns. Also, is their run game going to be the same as it was last year and the year before that? They ran some interesting plays to get Achane in space to try to get those long breakaways, especially 2 years ago. And if they run a different offensive scheme, how does Achane do in that different offensive scheme? I don't know. So I haven't touched him. If he gets into the second round and continues to fall, I think you got to consider it because he's such a talented player. But at 12, I have no problem passing on, especially if you can get someone like Justin Jefferson. And that's probably why he's falling. Justin Jefferson is rising, and Achane's now getting drafted after him more often. Henry is falling a bit on Underdog. Someone that I'm not really drafting at cost. So if he falls, though, I'll draft him. I think there's a strategy there on not just avoiding Henry all the time, no matter what, but I don't want to be aggressive with him, and I probably want to be underweight overall on him. Penix is falling because they signed Tua. Tucker's falling because he's probably going to be back in Tampa Bay, and now he's with Bucky Irving, and he's with Kenneth Gainwell. That's kind of interesting what's going on there. Bucky was thought of as a pass catcher, but also the main running back because they had White before. Now they have Gainwell, who's catching tons of passes last year, and you have Tucker, who is, took that goal line role or short yardage role a little bit in Tampa Bay last year. And so what does that mean for these three backs? Maybe not great things for any of them, potentially. Vidal dropping because they just signed Mitchell, and people don't know what's going on. If you get Vidal dropping enough, I think he's still probably a good pick. Kamara dropping, I probably wouldn't touch him right now. We don't know if he's going to be playing next year. Jordan Mason dropping because they re-signed Aaron Jones. I think they were going to re-sign someone anyways, or sign someone anyways. And Aaron Jones is more of the pass catcher. Jordan Mason was never going to be more of the pass catcher. So is this a bad run out for Jordan Mason? I don't think so. So if you can get him, I think that's still fine. He's going further than he was last year. And hopefully Kyler Murray makes the offense better than last year. And a better offense means more opportunities for the running backs. So, I mean, I don't know if Jordan Mason falling makes a whole lot of sense. Maybe he's falling a little bit because people like J.K. Dobbins are passing him up more than because people don't like Jordan Mason. David Montgomery is falling on Underdog, it looks like. I'm not sure why that's happening. Maybe because some players that were excited about David Montgomery are now more excited about someone like Tootin. And so he's falling just slightly because of that. DJ Moore is falling. That one doesn't make a whole lot of sense either. He already is both David Montgomery and DJ Moore are huge values on Underdog relative to DraftKings. Colby Parkinson, also a value on Underdog relative to DraftKings, and then again falling on this board. And then JJ McCarthy, it makes sense why he's falling. They signed Kyler Murray. You got to almost expect Kyler Murray starts the whole season type of thing unless something goes crazy. But I think Kyler Murray has a lot of incentive to do things the way that he needs to do things to rehabilitate his image, to sign that huge contract next year. And Minnesota's probably the place to do that. So those are the risers, fallers, and values that we have what do I think we should be doing with this information right now? Well, I think we should be avoiding a number of players on this fallers list, or at least trying to push them around. So, for example, um, we should be avoiding Trey Benson. We should be avoiding, I think, Sean Tucker. We should be avoiding Alvin Kamara. We should be avoiding JJ McCarthy. We should be pushing Bucky Irving into the third round and then reevaluating at that point in time. Pushing Theo Johnson much later, as there's probably more exciting options than him around that point. But again, if we need a third tight end, he can work in certain builds. Devon Achane, I think he's okay here. I'm not drafting him here. I'd be essentially if taking someone like Justin Jefferson ahead of Devon Achane. That's what I'd be doing. Derrick Henry, some people like him, some people don't. Penix, I'd be letting him fall, and I'd be considering, and I did this on one team. It's an ugly team, but like a Penix Tua stack where you get both of the Atlanta guys. It's ugly, but it's like a break in case of emergency type of thing. Tucker, I'm going to let him fall. He said fall. Vidal, I'm not drafting Vidal at cost. I think he's going to fall even more. Jordan Mason, I think, is fine to draft. And then I'm probably targeting David Montgomery and DJ Moore is what I'm doing. I don't know why they're fallers on here, and I think they're more valuable on Underdog. As far as the risers go, I think that you want to be targeting some of these players because they still have a lot of meat on the bone, like we said. And I'd also be thinking about how I can pair them with other players on my team. For example, can I get a Jaden Daniels and get someone like Chig, someone like Rachaad White later in the draft at value is what I'd be thinking about. Can I get a Justin Jefferson right now before he rises too much and then get a Kyler Murray before he rises too much? He's on this list, but he's rising too overall. So those are the Underdog market movers for the day. See you on the next one. Good luck drafting.